Remember that fat Brooklyn Jew who thought that a Palestinian's home was promised to him 3,000 years ago? Dude literally had the audacity to say,
and if I don't steal it, someone else is gonna steal it.
Israel was battered by Iran and had to beg his daddy, the US, for a ceasefire. And I ain't gonna lie, I was bumping this song for a few days. Israel is now seen as a rogue state on the global stage, as its political standing has also collapsed. And as the genocidal ethno-state takes losses on every front, we just might be seeing the Zionist project come to an end. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the end of Israel, or what I think is going to be lead to the end of Israel. And by end of Israel, I mean the end of the Zionist state, the end of the Zionist project, and the freedom of the Palestinian people. And this is basically a theoretical video where I'm just basing it off of the information that I've gathered over the last few years. And just to let you all know, I've known Israel to be a criminal entity for the last 20 years. Just the genocide in Gaza is not really what radicalized me and opened my eyes up to what Israel is possible and capable of doing. Nothing Israel does surprises me, really, okay? Because I've known what they're capable of doing. I know how much they dehumanize not only Palestinian life, but all life, really. And so my understanding as a systems thinker, when I became a systems thinker, and somebody who understands that capitalism is the root source of all problems about 15 years ago, that's when I started analyzing Israel on a deeper level. To understand that it's not just like a criminal Zionist entity, it's also a colonial entity that's fueled by the imperial notions of the West, meaning Europe and the United States. Okay, so that's really what I mean by my criticism of Israel comes from an anti-capitalist, a beyond capitalist, and a systemic thinking viewpoint. So as we all know, October 7th was the insurrection event where Hamas broke into Israel, killed several hundred people. I say 100 people, several hundred, because not over 1,000 people, because more than half the people killed were killed by the IDF using the Hannibal Directive. If anybody wants to look it up, check it out. The Hannibal Directive, which basically means that the U.S. military, the Israeli military, which is, funnily enough, they get all their equipment from the U.S. empire anyway. But the Israeli military will be willing to kill their own people instead of letting them be taken captive. Okay, so that's what happened on October 7th. It was a resounding defeat for Israel. Netanyahu called himself Mr. Security. He failed terribly on that day. Now, there are also speculations that Israel wanted that to happen to expedite their process of ethnic cleansing and genocide that they've wanted to do all along anyway. I mean, if you really think about it, before October 7th, the genocide was already happening. It was a very slow motion genocide, though. It was slow in its progression. The Abraham Accords were signed by Donald Trump and Israel, where basically they're trying to normalize relations with the Arab states, which meant the Palestinian people were going to be more strangled and more disempowered than ever before. So Hamas saw that as an opportunity to strike back. And under international law, by the way, not my opinion, under international law, occupied and oppressed people have a right and a duty and an obligation to resist and fight back against the occupiers, okay? So Israel as an occupying force does not have a right to defend itself. Israel as an occupying force can only keep that occupation as a temporary occupation until they let go and they move out and they allow the Palestinian people their freedom, which, as we all know, it's not been that case. And so October 7th really opened up the eyes of the world. For anybody who did not know what I've known all along, they learned the truth about 1948, the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, 1948, where 750,000 people were kicked out of their homes, 15,000 were killed and massacred, women were raped. That's how Israel was founded. And then from that point on, land theft, colonialism, in the West Bank, settler expansion, which is completely illegal under international law. Israel is an ethno-state. If anybody didn't know that before, now they know about all the laws in Israel that discriminate against Arabs. It's a Jewish state, which means that it's a Jewish supremacist state. The Jews have more rights. The Jews have more economic power than the Palestinians and the Arabs in that region. So what the world also learned is how the West, meaning majority of countries in Europe, like Germany, like England, like France, and the United States as well, they support Israel. They're willing to do anything for this ethno-supremacist state. Because in reality, Israel is an extension of the European and the United States empire. Okay, it's an extension of their colonial mentality. Where, I mean, there are a bunch of European Jews and Jews from the United States that migrated to Israel. Majority of Israeli Jews have absolutely no genetic roots to that region. That's why the majority of them don't want to do a DNA test. They refuse the DNA test because they'll show the fraudulent nature of the Zionist entity. October 7th happened, and then the war began between Hamas and Israel. Israel proceeded to commit a genocide, which basically it lost its favor in the world, in the eyes of the world. The majority of the world, especially the global South, which is sick and tired of colonialism and imperialism that's been done to its own people, they absolutely despise Israel. Israel's been blacklisted to the majority of countries around the world. Many places around the world, they refuse Israeli tourists, and I wonder why. Because they're some of the most insufferable human beings. And again, this is not my opinion. I looked at many different countries where, Malaysia and Thailand, they report Israeli tourists as being very rude, entitled, arrogant. They don't clean up after themselves, which really speaks to the mentality of Zionism. It's not Judaism, okay? My best friend's Jewish, by the way. Zionism imposes this mentality of ultra-tribalism. We have to understand that. Zionism is the mentality that, anybody who is not a non-Zionist Jew is inferior to us. That's what they have a word called goyim, right? Goyim. So they have this word called goyim from anybody who's not a Zionist Jew. Yeah, I mean, that's been exposed to the majority of the world. Most of the world knows now. They don't buy their crap anymore. All these cries about anti-Semitism. Oh my God, you're anti-Semitic if you don't like Israel. No, I'm sorry. The war in Gaza happened, and then Israel began to attack Lebanon, start a war with Hezbollah, and then, they destabilized Syria and took it over. And so they thought to themselves, here's an opportunity. Because all the allies of Iran have been weakened, their major enemy in the region being Iran, they sought upon themselves the opportunity to attack Iran and attempt a regime change, using the nuclear weapons thing as an excuse to launch an illegal war, an unprovoked attack from the United States and Israel, which, let's face it, Israel did not act alone. They attacked Iran using intelligence, satellite data, intelligence by the CIA, weapons from the United States, financial funding, political cover, all those things from the United States and Europe and NATO. Using those resources to attack Iran, they thought it would be an easy victory. Well, guess what? Among the many myths that were shattered, the myths regarding Israel being a democratic state, which is not, it's an ethno-state, it's an apartheid state. The myths that, Israel's borders are totally secure, shattered because Hamas broke in, did severe damage to their political standing and to the political standing of Netanyahu. The myths that, Hamas will be absolutely obliterated in no time. It's going to be so easy to defeat Hamas. That myth has still been shattered because Hamas is still standing in Gaza and fighting back better than ever before, harder than ever before. Because, I don't know, gee whiz, when you kill tens of thousands of people, which actually been reported to be potentially over 300,000 have been killed, majority of them women and children. When you kill that many people and displace them, their children are going to have resentment against you, and they're going to be willing to sign up for Hamas, which in my view is a resistance organization. Sure, they do engage in acts of terrorism. Sure, they act in acts of violence. Sure, but what do you expect? As a systems thinker, will you realize that environment is environment is what shapes behavior? The same way that Israel, as a colonial ethno-state, was formed because of the after effects of capitalism, imperialism, and colonialism, okay? The same way as that reality exists, well, Hamas is a resistance organization that was formed just like Hezbollah due to Israeli aggression, Israeli occupation. So that's the reality. That's the reality, and the world is waking up to that. That's why so many young people in the United States literally sympathize more with Hamas than they do with Israel, with the IDF. The IDF has also been shown, exposed to the world to be a terrorist organization. A bunch of cowards who are willing to kill women and children. And when they got into a confrontation with Iran, what happened? In my view, they have experienced a resounding defeat because they were not able to overthrow Iran right away. That's another myth, right? That Iran is very easy to overthrow. Well, guess what? First of all, I don't agree with the Iranian government. I'm not a supporter of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Absolutely not. Okay? I've gone on record saying that 100 times, over and over and over again. I'll be saying it over and over again because people are going to accuse me of being a supporter of the Islamic Republic. But I mean, considering the things that Israel and the United States have done to the world, especially the United States, the Islamic Republic, with all their oppression, with all the removal of women's rights, they look like angels, man, compared to what the IDF has done. Okay? They look like angels. By the way, things have radically changed in Iran. It's evolving into a better society over time. You know, women have way more rights now. Girls can actually walk around Tehran in most places with their hair being shown. They don't have to cover their hair anymore. Iran has been industrially developing pretty well, considering all the brutal sanctions the United States had actually imposed on Iran. The brutal sanctions for over 40 years, Iran's doing pretty damn well. Like, I mean, it's not a utopia by any means, but it's holding up pretty well. They have the very good domestic-grown industrial base. They have a pretty decent standard of living compared to other countries around them in the region that have been destroyed by the United States. Really, if you think about it, and they have a pretty nice, strong technological base. I mean, the missile technology is absolutely incredible, and most of it is domestically grown. Okay, and the missiles that we saw do tremendous damage to Israel, to Tel Aviv. Reports are coming out that over 30,000 permits have been given out for reconstruction, meaning that is how much damage has been done to the infrastructure of Tel Aviv and to Israel. One of the major ports, I think, is Haifa, was severely damaged by the missile strikes. The oil refineries have been damaged. Military bases, Mossad headquarters, weapons technology, research headquarters have been damaged and destroyed. So Israel has suffered tens of billions of dollars of damage during that war and have been shown to be completely vulnerable. And this really plays into what I'm talking about when I talk about the end of Israel. This is where I'm getting to, guys, okay? And so when we look at the Iran war, the 12-day war that Israel waged on Iran, what was happening before that? The IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, were doing inspections in Iran, and they said that Iran was not developing a nuclear weapon. And then the Trump regime, they said, hey, listen, you know what? Let's have negotiations. Let's have a fourth round of negotiations on Sunday. And so that was an attempt to lure Iran into a false sense of security. And Israel, you looked at it as an opportunity with the backing of the United States and the funding and the weapons of the United States to launch an assault on Iran, actually doing tremendous damage, you know. And I was kind of worried in the initial days of that attack, but Iran recovered, rebounded tremendously, and struck back, did severe damage, even with all the weapons and the anti-air missiles that NATO and the United States, those helicarriers were providing to Israel. It still could not defend itself fully. They were overwhelmed by the missile strikes, and Iran did severe damage. One thing that it does expose, that 12-day war, is the dirty and disgusting, filthy, fraudulent, dishonest nature of the IAEA, of NATO, of Europe, and the United States. They're such bad faith actors. The world should never trust them ever again. Never take these people for the word ever again. They lied to them. And military commanders went home with their families and they were slaughtered in their sleep with their children, with their wives. I mean, that's just disgusting. It's a blatant war crime. It's a war of aggression. And then France comes out, England comes out saying Israel has the right to defend itself. From what? Nothing was even done to Israel during that time. This should show, right then and there, the dishonest nature of these imperial colonial actors as they take pride in their defense of their precious ethno-state, their disgusting ethno-state that is still waging a genocide in Gaza, still committing ethnic cleansing in Gaza, still committing ethnic cleansing in the West Bank with all these illegal settlements. So let me start talking about the beginning of the end of Israel and how I foresee things in the near future. And again, this could happen literally in a month from now. It could happen a few years from now. Could happen 10 years from now. But I really, really, really think it's going to happen. I really think it's going to happen. First of all, the blockade that Yemen has imposed on the Red Sea. I mean, we got to give so much credit to Yemen, one of the poorest countries in the world that has really not much to gain from defending Palestine, but yet they do so. All these powerful countries, all these powerful nations like China, Russia, all these European countries that can make a tremendous impact on this conflict, stand by and do nothing, whereas Yemen is taking action at severe cost, being bombarded by the United States to impose the Red Sea blockade, which they're still doing, which heavily impacts Israel's economy, which is what I'm going to get to right now. Israel's economy has been suffering severely. Many of the educated, high-earning, high-position job Jewish people in Israel have fled the country. The educated people are fleeing the country, and Israel is being left over and handed over to a bunch of ultra-religious extremist Jews who really, they're a bunch of rednecks who don't know how to manage a country. So the economy is going downhill. Investors are pulling out. And a lot of these major companies that invested in Israel are pulling out, which only signals more damage to the Israeli economy. Not to mention, the Israeli stock exchange was bombed by Iran as well. So that's one side of the equation. All right, I had to switch my position because it's raining right now. I heard a couple large thunderclouds, which the thunderclouds may be a foreshadowing of the instability and the chaos that might be coming to the region in the Middle East, sadly. Because we all know as Israel collapses, it's gonna pose a very severe danger to the world, because they have an undeclared 100, potentially more than 100 nuclear weapons that are basically declined by the NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty. They declined to be allowed open to inspection by the IAEA as well, which shows more complicity on the part of the West and the IAEA, and how biased they really are, against a country like Iran. All right, so the rain was way too unbearable. I had to move inside. I don't want to shoot videos indoors like this. It's so unprofessional the way things look right now, but I have to just to finish this video up. But I was talking about the collapse of the Israeli economy, how it's spiraling downhill. Now, the Israeli economy collapsing is not really something that's going to on its own destroy Israel, because the United States are their backer and their financial suppliers. So no matter what happens to Israel financially, the United States will always be there to fund them, and be their bankroller. I mean, like, that's just an inevitable reality. It just is always going to be there. But it's one thing that's going to lead to more instability. And when the economy is not doing well, and the global standing of Israel, all the investors pulling out, it's going to force more Zionist Jews to flee Israel. And that is really one of the key factors that's going to lead to the demise of Israel. Because like I said, a lot of the educated, liberal Zionists are leaving the country, okay? And that is a major factor to consider. And now, let's talk about the political standing of Israel, their image around the world. That is a major, major factor as well, which leads to more resentment against Israel, which again can lead to the flight of more Zionist Jews who want to leave Israel. Not to mention this so-called democratic state, which is all about human rights and all that. During the bombardment where Iran was shelling Israel with the missiles, so many Zionist Jews wanted to leave Israel. So many of the Israelis wanted to flee, but the Israeli government prevented most of them from leaving. Talk about human shields, right? When you talk about Hamas, human shields, this and that. How about Israel using its own citizens as human shields? How about Israel putting all its military assets and intelligence assets around civilian infrastructure? So again, it really comes to bear that is another example of every Israeli accusation is a confession. And so when it comes to the hypocrisy of Israel, saying that they're about human rights and they want peace and that democracy, the image has been absolutely shattered, absolutely obliterated around the world. Again, when we see all the information coming out of Israel, all the polls, I mean, one of the most startling things that people have seen regarding Israeli society, you cannot say that Netanyahu and the far-right government of Israel right now are the only problems in Israel. No. The root source of the problem goes deeper than that. The root source is the colonial entity that views itself superior to other people, and the fact that Israeli society, deep down, is, in my view, the sickest society ever in the history of humanity. Ever. Nothing is sicker than this. I mean, polls are coming out. 82% of Israelis think that there are no innocent people in Gaza. Over 60% of Israelis support a complete genocide in Gaza, killing everyone there. I mean, the polls come out of Israel, which I'm pretty much going to show in this video. I'm going to show a few of them. They're absolutely horrific. They're absolutely horrific. Israeli society per capita uses the internet more than any other country per capita, which means that the IDF, which is the reservist army, right? Which means that like almost every single citizen in Israel that is of age to serve in the military has to do a mandatory military service. So we're talking about literally a giant military base in the Middle East. And so when you think about the fact that the majority of them are military participants, and they use the internet and they broadcast their crimes passionately and proudly to the world, they're broadcasting their crimes, their horrific crimes of obliterating civilian infrastructure, destroying schools, destroying hospitals, destroying nurseries, bakeries, destroying agricultural land, committing mass rape. As the Israeli citizens get on television and they debate, these so-called Israeli activists debate about the right to grape Palestinians or not. Israeli activists block the humanitarian route for food to get into Gaza. They want everyone to starve there. When you see all this information coming out, how can you possibly be proud of that? Unless you're such a tribalistic, which I give them credit. One thing about Israeli society, they work really well together. They unify really well together, and they work really well in imposing their will on other people. Because, again, it's a highly racist and tribalistic society, which if you use systems thinking, you can realize that, well, tribalism of any kind of form, right? Xenophobia or tribalism of any kind, like in-group, out-group association, it really comes down to this scarcity-oriented worldview. Goes back to capitalism. Capitalism has basically imposed a condition of artificial scarcity on the whole world, whereas people have to fight for survival, for resources, and there's a whole deserving factor. Certain people are not equal to other people, and certain other people deserve more than others. And so we look at that mentality of deservingness and hierarchy and competition and fear of scarcity. The most primitive and hideous expression of that, in my view, is Zionism. Because it literally is a colonial mentality that, like, you know what? No matter who we're facing, we're better than them. We are the best people in the world. We're God's, look at that, the fucking arrogant statement. God's chosen people. So when you look at people like that, who think in that manner, it's been exposed, man. The whole world resents them. The majority of the world resents them. And that is not a factor for sustainability when it comes to Israel. That is a highly unsustainable reality for the Zionist state, okay? And so again, the political standing has been shattered. People see what's happening on the media. It's the first live stream genocide in history. Anybody who's keeping their eyes open knows what I'm talking about. Again, that's another leading factor to the demise of Israel. Their economy is downhill. Their political standing is downhill. Eventually, I do see sanctions by some European countries being placed on their economy, which is going to further damage their standing. We're going to see more educated Zionist, liberal Zionist leave Israel. Now, despite the tremendous amount of tribalism and unity within Israel when it comes to dealing with outside enemies, like the Arabs or Palestinians or Iran, they are having a tremendous amount of political strife internally. Because in Israel, there are a few factions. There are the left, liberal Zionists. There are the center left, center right. There is the far right. And then there is the ultra-Orthodox Jews. And they all have disagreements on how things should be dealt, how they should deal with the Palestinian problem. For example, the liberal Zionists, they don't want to openly talk about genocidal language. They don't want to be as extreme in how they deal with things, even though they are genocide supporters. They're supporters of ethno-supremacism. They do have issues with the way Netanyahu is governing things. And so they're making their voice heard. And there's a lot of debates and fights in the Knesset and the political establishment of Israel. So that's one problem. There's also the ultra-Orthodox Jews who refuse to enlist in the IDF. They refuse military action. And so, as much as Israel wants to enlist them and recruit them for the IDF, that goes completely against their belief system. And so that's going to cause a further ripple and divide in the Israeli society because, we have all this infighting going on between the ultra-Orthodox Jews, the radical, the far right, the center right, center left, and the liberal Zionists. So they are having these issues. They're being torn apart. Their society is being torn apart because Israel, because of the fact that it's founded on Zionism, which is a land theft ideology, is an ideology of a settler colonial entity, it does not know how to resolve things diplomatically. It does not know how to get along with its neighbors. It does not know how to properly, in a diplomatic and intelligent political way, to provide human rights to the Palestinian people who they're oppressing. So because of that, because of the fact that it's such a violent, unstable, racist ethno-state, their only solution is conflict. Their only solution is conflict and ideally, in their view, quick, resounding success. They believe in having, starting fights and ending those decisively and very quickly, such as how they did with Egypt and such as how they did in the past with Hezbollah. They want to have resounding, quick success when it comes to military conflict. And that is why, and this is where I'm getting to, in my view, the collapse of Israel and the destruction of Israel the end of Israel, Iran. Iran is the first time in Israel's history where they're dealing with a state, another state actor that can pound them very hard, hit them back. They're very worried about that. And because they can only deal with, the only way of solving problems is through conflict and through fighting, this is literally driving them insane. This is driving Israel insane at how they're talking about what can we do with Iran. Iran hit us back. They humiliated us. If you see, if you think that Israel won that war, just look at the way when the war was over and this fake ceasefire was signed by Trump, which is a fake ceasefire because Israel can break it any time. Israel does break every ceasefire ever signed in history. But when the ceasefire was signed and the fighting stopped, the Iranian people got on the streets, were celebrating. Massive celebrations. Can you say the same for Israel? Were people in Israel celebrating? Did they feel like they won anything? Not really. They did not establish deterrence. That's the whole point with Israel. Israel wants to be able to dominate and commit atrocious war crimes with complete impunity without having anyone hold them accountable. They want to establish infinite and permanent deterrence. And they were not able to do that with Iran. They were not able to do that with Iran. And so I do believe strongly that Israel is out for blood. They want revenge, okay? They're going to attack Iran again. And I really fear the consequences because, I don't want to see any more bloodshed. I do fear Israel being a psychopathic actor. They may use nuclear weapons. If Iran hits them so hard that they feel like they're being eradicated, they may use nuclear weapons. But the percent chance of nuclear weapons being used, although I cannot rule that out completely, is low because if Israel uses nuclear weapons, it gives its enemies every right to strike them with nuclear weapons. Basically, it's just all options are on table, basically, Iran can develop their nuclear weapons. And by the way, using nuclear weapons against Iran is not going to destroy Iran. Iran's a very large country, 90 million plus people. Israel is literally the size of New Jersey. So all it takes is one nuke to destroy Israel. And so Pakistan, which, is an enemy of Israel, they promised to give nuclear weapon technology to Iran if Iran needs it. And so if Israel commits a nuclear strike against Iran, first of all, it destroys their legitimacy even more so than ever before. They will lost all legitimacy on the world stage. Their allies will have a very, very, very hard time defending them. 1, 2, anything goes at that point. All the enemies have the right now to use a nuclear weapon against them, okay? And, 3, it's just going to create such an unstable world. Any state acting out is going to give Russia, the excuse, okay, we can bomb Ukraine now. So because of the political pressure not to use nuclear weapons, I don't think they will use nuclear weapons. I think it's going to be a conventional war waged between Israel and Iran, and one which I think Iran will win. No matter what America does, Iran has been preparing for a war with the United States for over 20 years now. To Iran, Israel is a small-time player. Iran does not fear Israel, and we can see that with what they did to Israel in this recent war. And so Israel will hit Iran. I absolutely think Israel is going to commit another attack against Iran, but this time Iran will hit them back much harder, I think. There might be a second war, if not a third war. And every time Iran and Israel get into a fight, Israel's going to be more damaged, more weakened. And here's where I'm getting to. I think Iran will do severe damage to the infrastructure of Israel. I think their command and control structure, their intelligence bases, their military structure are going to be severely damaged, if not destroyed. And when that happens, you got to realize, in the West Bank, Palestinians far outnumber Israelis, okay? Even in Israel proper, within the borders of Israel, there's a pretty decent amount of Palestinian civilians as well. When the command and control structure collapses, when their intelligence gathering structure collapses and they're weakened severely, I really think there's going to be an opportunity by the Palestinian people in the West Bank to rise up. There may be a very large chance for a third intifada, a third uprising against the Zionist state, and that may be a very big factor in Israel's undoing, as they overrun. In the West Bank, there are not that many Israeli outposts that are controlling that area, and those outposts will be overrun. I think they will be overrun. Palestinians are going to rise up. So I think Iran is not going to be the one to end Israel. I don't think Iran's going to be the country to end Israel. Iran's going to damage Israel. Yemen will continue imposing the Red Sea blockade. Hezbollah might join in during that position of weakness, strike from the north. The Palestinian people in the West Bank will rise up. The third intifada will begin. And I think it's going to be a massive political resurgence. The third intifada will, and it might be a very violent one as well, to overthrow the Zionist state. And ultimately, many numbers of Israeli Jews will just get up and leave. They'll go back to Europe. They'll go back to Brooklyn. They'll go back to New Jersey. They'll go back to, Poland, Ukraine, England, wherever they came from. And, as soon as the number of Jews are outnumbered by Arabs, that is in essence the end of Israel. You do not have to destroy Israel physically to defeat it. You have to bring about conditions that lead to the political defeat of Israel, and that is all that needs to be done to destroy Israel. That's all that needs to be done to defeat Israel. I do believe Iran will weaken Israel, hit them back really hard. Look, they don't know any better, man. The Zionists don't know any better. They can now learn from their mistakes. They don't know how to live in peace and harmony with their neighbors. They don't know anything better than this sense of entitlement and arrogance that they're better than everybody, And they're not going to learn the lessons the easy way. They're going to learn their lessons the hard way. Iran will hit them really hard. The Palestinian people will overrun them in the West Bank, and there will be massive migration out of Israel by Zionist Israelis, and that will, in my view, that's going to be the overall equation. Political collapse, internal strife, economic downturn, military defeat, and then a civilian uprising of the Palestinians. These 5 factors, when they come together, they form a perfect storm of bringing about the beginning of the end of Israel. If anybody who cares about Jews, any Jewish person who cares about Jews would not support Israel, because Israel has literally destroyed the idea, the very word anti-Semitism around the world. Israel has really thrown a big stain upon the name of all good faith Jews around the world. If Israel collapses, the white supremacists will throw Jews under the bus, and they'll blame all the problems on Israel, and they'll take away all the blame from themselves. Hey, it wasn't us, it was the Jews. It might look like Nazi Germany all over again. Really, I really think so. That is how disgusting and dishonest these people really are. The white supremacists, Trump's people. They have absolutely a zero and empty value system. It only comes down to their own self-interest. That's all they care about, their own self-interest. When Palestine becomes free, when we do have the formation of a Palestinian state, man, they deserve it, man. Palestinian people deserve this so bad because their sacrifice and their martyrdom, I'm using the word martyrdom because, it's their sacrifice that has led to the awakening and the radicalization of so many people around the world. So many people who are new anti-capitalists have become so because of the sacrifice of the Palestinian people. Their unwilling sacrifice. They didn't want to be in this situation. Israel came to them. They didn't go to Israel. Israel came to them, to their land, took their land away, killed their children, committed a genocide against innocent civilians. And so they deserve freedom because Palestine has really truly set so many of people's minds free. It has liberated the minds of so many people. And it started an international anti-colonization campaign to decolonize not only our lands, but decolonize our minds from the propaganda of the West and how the West claims to be, a beacon of democracy and human rights. Fuck that, man. The West, now, there are a lot of good people in the United States. There's a lot of amazing people in Europe. And I'm not demonizing every single person or civilians. No, I'm not. What I'm saying is that the institutions, the corporations, the banks, the media, the major elite power players, these are savages. These are barbarians. The West, the mainstream consensus, the status quo of the value system of the West, of the United States empire, is one of barbarism, savagery, disgusting, anti-life behavior. And, what Palestine has really shown us, this war, this conflict has shown us is I'm sorry, man, the global South, ethnic people, Iranians, Persian people, Arab people are not what they make us out to be. We're not savages. We're not what they demonize us to be. We're not barbaric, inhumane people. Persian culture, one of the oldest cultures in history, going back over what, 4,000 years. You know, at one point was the pinnacle of arts and science and architecture and human rights. First of all, by the way, the first document, the Declaration of Human Rights, was formed by Cyrus the Great thousands of years ago, at a time when they're burning witches in Europe, so-called witches, burning women and calling them witches in Europe. You know, Persian society had human rights. One of the very first proclamations of human rights. Arab culture, Iranian culture, the global South, in the end, will be vindicated. The world will see that we are not the villains. The true disgusting hegemons of this world are the United States, NATO, their allies, the West. These European countries that claim to be the peak of civilization, they're not. They have never been the peak of civilization. They only happen to have, through environmental preconditions, the opportunity to have more weapons, have more powerful weapons, which enable them to, because of their disgusting value system, right, which comes down to individual self-maximization, gave them the opportunity to colonize and enslave the global South and exploit them for centuries. Well, that is now coming to an end. Well, the multipolar reality setting before us, and with Palestine being free eventually, the majority of the world will be free. And yeah, people who watch my content to the end, please drop a green heart in the comments so that I can see that you watched the video all the way to the end, okay? That's all I can ask, guys. You know, share this video with other people who may find it relevant. And peace out. I'll see you soon. Much love. F capitalism.